Alright, this is Bayonetta 2. 90% Rosa easy. My name is a Variety Pack, and I'll be taking you through this game for today. We're going to be starting time as soon as I hit no on the second prompt here. So let's get going on 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Alright, so the first thing that you'll notice about us playing Bayonetta 2 with this particular character is that we are not actually playing as the titular character named Bayonetta. We are going to be playing as Rosa, who has a very idiosyncratic property that gives her the ability to deal out 3 times as much damage as Bayonetta. Now, technically, this comes with a bit of a drawback. In any other circumstance, the fact that you take 3 times as much damage as well would be sort of a problem, and indeed on the other sort of difficulty levels of normal, hard, and especially infinite climax, that does end up being kind of tricky. However, for us playing on easy, that actually does not come into play. You start to hear the records of time, which is basically
the legend of Ace,
more, but we
a legend from the dawn of time.
Walk over here.
Nobody knows where the world came from.
This is the only
A struggle caused the trinity of realities to be split into 3 realms: light, darkness, and chaos. Obviously, our world was the one born from chaos. The 3 worlds all needed rulers. Most of all,
simply because you will reduce lag.
And the one that ruled the chaos became known as Ace.
Now, if you never really played any sort of happy classes, you're not doing anything like that. You really have 2 abilities. You can punch and you can kick. And the fun of this game comes into the fact that you can string them into different components. So we're in a mech now, and I'll explain that later. So you can punch and you can kick, and you can sort of string them into many components. You also have the ability to shoot guns by mashing the Y button, and you can dodge by hitting the right trigger, as you decide to do there. Now, despite the fact that we have an entire list of combos that you can technically see, we're really only going to be seeing 2 of them, maybe. When we're playing as the character Rosa, we're going to be doing punch, kick, punch. And when we're playing as the mech, we're just going to be doing punch, punch, and then holding the final punch of the 3. This will make it so that we do double damage with our mechs because we have both arms out instead of just one. Bullets tend to do the highest DPS in this game for whatever reason. It's particularly noticeable when you do Bayonetta runs, since you buy the Star Fox costume, which gives you higher output, damage output on the guns specifically. So it ends up being the most
Humans gained free will. They could now choose. With control of the eyes of the world, the eyes that determine destiny, humans could choose their own.
Now you will get access to that
They awoke to their own identity.
when your magic meter, which we can't actually see right now, but you will get access to it when your magic meter reaches the full amount, and you get an instant.
And we took our first big step.
After that, you have a limited amount of time that you can use all of your abilities before you revert back to
The
it.
eyes of Aesir had been granted the power of creation.
Now, the reason that I play this on Rosa, especially on easy, is because it is an extremely satisfying run. There's just no other way to say it. Basically, you completely dominate every single enemy that you see, and you're basically in no danger for the vast majority of the time. We're going to make our way into the prologue here, skip a couple cutscenes, and take out these first enemies. There's a punch-kick-punch combo that I didn't see before. And our first prime directive in this section is simply to get rid of all the enemies as fast as possible. Punch-kick-punch is going to be our premier way of getting in. And now we have access to Wicked Use, which are basically just combo enders, combo finishers on every single one of punch-kick-punch, or any other combo that we decide that we should use, but like I said, punch-kick-punch is just very optimal, simply because it gives us access to a Wicked Use rather quickly. Now, our magic meter you can actually see in the top left. When that is full, and I have 2 of them, you can turn into the mech and just deal catastrophic amounts of damage to all the other. This is indeed a very powerful option for damage, but we're actually going to unlock another big damage mechanic later down the line, known as Pro Defense. That's full defense mechanic. The only thing that's really important to note about this section is that we need to keep our combo meter up as much as possible. You see that on the middle right hand side in the menu labeled combo. You can do that, yes, by hitting enemies, but also by taunting in the downwards on the pad. The reason we want to keep our combo meter up is because you need to buy a lot of items after the very first chapter. And we need a lot of money to do that. The rest of this is honestly just the auto scroller. We're going to be using our combos optimally just to make sure that might if you do. Now, Witch Time is a very interesting ability because it lets you dodge all incoming damage, all the long windows with which you can deal any damage back to your target. That's technically a good thing, but there will be many, many times where we actually don't want to use it, simply because Witch Time, even though it's good, is also very slow because it slows down the environment. So doing it here is also make a block and a ton of damage from this bleeding from the as soon as possible. And then as you deal extra damage, you're going to need to do one more Wish Time. Just for a little bit more mech damage. But then I'm actually going to take damage on purpose, just make it so that we don't enter Wish Time when it doesn't actually need to. That phase of the fight you can only deal so much damage in that particular phase of the fight. By taking damage instead of activating Witch Time, you prevent this game from slowing down. A couple extras. At the end of any gigantic boss encounter, there are basically these really long cutscenes that are accompanied by either quick time or mashing events. If you remember playing on Bayonetta 1, these can actually be rather difficult, but on Bayonetta 2. That is the one that actually was our but we're going to want to do here an instance of mech before he actually attacks. Got it. The reason for that is if he attacks it sort of knocks us backwards a little bit and it takes a little bit of time to get back to him. If you're playing as Bayonetta, it is unthinkable that you're going to actually be able to bring down the boss's health bar to 0 before the second phase of the fight, but here we are. The game doesn't really know what to do with itself, so it just kind of keeps going, even though the fight is very much over. And we're going to go to the second phase. And it's over. Our climax cutscene. This time we just do a bit of rotation of the right stick, which you can do with your talking, but it's a little bit more experience to use your finger. And for pause. In terms of the game's plot, which I guess I'll cover here since we have the time, your dear friend Jean got his soul knocked out of her by Gamora, and as we carry her lifeless body, the first half of the game is going to be spent trying to retrieve her soul. Have our fun. And believe it or not, that was just the prologue. We have 16 more chapters. Not all of them are the same length. Some of them are just one fight, some of them are 2 fights. Chapter 1 is oddly one of the longer chapters in the game. Thankfully, we don't have to think about it. It's just the first chapter, and despite it being long, there's no real difficult encounter. movement is a really important thing to get down, especially since run is so technically easy that you want to make sure that everything else is optimized as much as possible. You'll see me transform into this Kruger here. We can do that by hitting the right trigger twice and activating one of our many transform abilities. And we're going to perform the first fight skip here by jumping from this little platform here into the middle circle, but not actually activating the fight by going way too inside. With that little bit of movement, we can activate the first. Cougar is technically not our fastest moving option, but we rarely get to see the other fastest one. But it will come. We're now going to enter the gates of hell, in which we can purchase all of the things that we needed to get, which is why they grinded so much money from the beginning. We're going to get purple and red lollipops, which increase our magic and damage output respectively, and also 3 abilities. One, Hornet Within, which extends the window on our witch time. Extends the window on our witch time. Witch Twist, which comes in a little bit later, as well as Pro Within, which is actually our most potent damage option, which we're going to see in a fight here. You saw me equip some of those lollipops to my quick wheel, simply because I don't want to enter the menu every single time I want to do the can't do, which is sparingly, but it comes up enough where you're going to miss it. We're only going to go to the store one more time. Technically, there's no real reason not to do that other than it's slow. You will always have enough if you've done your prologue grinding correctly. Here's the power of the crow. Take a look at that boss health bar. Activate feathers on a crow, and it's hard. So, by jumping and summoning our crow form, we can activate a ring of feathers, and this do just the cataclysmic damage thing. I'm not exactly sure why they do, but boy am I glad that they do. Really fun, and it's optimizing use of feathers is by far the most important aspect of running any of the Rosa categories. For whatever reason, feathers do not do very much damage if you are Bayonetta or John. It's just Rosa, so it's a bit of a unique trait. We have a fight against Valiant here, but the power feathers are just too strong, and that fight is already done. So you can begin to see why I sort of like running this category specifically as opposed to the Bayonetta and the John runs. I feel super powerful, and I never feel like I'm in danger of like losing the run. Sure, you'll have runs that you'll have to like adapt to the enemy AI in a little bit different ways depending on each run, but for the most part, you're never going to be really fearing for the health and safety of the run. This fight's pretty simple, just turn to the neck, and with 2 punches, you can take out all of those little flaws. We're also going to be introduced to this character named Loki. Loki is annoying and sucks, and we don't really care about his storyline, other than the fact that he's like 1/2 of the final boss. Not too much. If you have any spin emotes, I'd love to see them in the chat. Because they made the scarf physics on Rosa weirdly good for some reason, so this is the perfect place to use any spin emotes.
So let's make a deal. You save me, I'll show you around this joint.
I wish I had anything interesting to say over the Loki segments, but I simply don't.
And it'll take 2 of us, won't it, love?
Skip a cutscene, and you can open doors one of 2 ways. You can hit them open, or you can hit Y and take the slow way. If you can use an attack on doors that... Now let's try against the enemies here. We're also going to want to do this thing called preloading fights, meaning that you're going to enter fights with a little bit of feathers, even though the fight's technically not. This will make it so you have to spend less time actually activating them. And, yeah. We want to optimize things as much as possible. This fight also looks very intimidating, but with the power of feathers, nothing is intimidating. We are the true intimidators. Coming up, we have our final boss fight of the chapter against Glamour.
Try to keep up.
But much like Gamora, there's not too much to say about. What we're going to be doing is dodging the first attack that is scripted, and by turning into the feathers and jumping backwards, we can make it so that we can continuously release rings of feathers into his face before the first phase is even over. So that's the first phase of the Feather Lord, and that's technically also the second phase of the Feather Lord. We're going to be shooting and mashing our Y button just so we can trigger the stage where we can actually activate the final assignments. Smash A couple times, and that is the fight in the end of the first chapter. Not too bad so far. Alright, moving on to chapter 2. It's basically a lot more of the same. This is also a long chapter. They seem to front load the first chapters with a lot of fights and stuff like that. You'll see what I mean when we get to like things like chapter 5 and chapter 6, where there's like one fight for the entire chapter. We're gonna reach into this chest here and pick up an additional Mega Red Lollipop, which will increase our damage output. Run towards an enemy that basically buffs other enemies, and apparently failed that. So that's okay. We did take damage there instead of dodging properly, but 90% of this run is adapting to what the enemy AI is. This is the fastest move in optimization that I've alluded to before. You transform into the mech and dash while in the mech. It is slightly faster than moving with the pan.
I've never seen a witch.
You can only do that when you have one full magic bar, and because you're not actually using it in combat, your magic bar does not drain nearly as fast as when you're using it in combat.
Even know whose side you're on? All right.
More
Seems I can
spins if
control
you've
the
got any.
remnants of time. That's a big deal here.
It seems.
I mean, no. I got nothing else to say, love.
Alright. Attack this door open, and we're gonna preload some feathers for a fight against two very intimidating looking enemies. There's one, and there's two.
Darkness is the absence of light.
Slow down, will you?
There is a trick that you can do here, known as the 2 versus 4 skip. It's very inconsistent for me, so I'm not going to be doing it. Luckily with this, it's not too big of a deal if you can't do any of the skips, because fights don't last very long.
This is simply the benefit of training.
Yet another boss fight against enemies here. But again, nothing really lasts too long in this playing with Rosa. We got a frog at this time for our climax weapon.
Nothing can contain me.
And to finish off the chapter, we're going to revert gravity to its normal direction and simply dodge once, activate the walking animation.
That performance might make the back page of the classified.
Alright, chapter 3 is a speedrunner's worst nightmare. It is an auto-scroller. Not only is it an auto-scroller, but it is an auto-scroller with phases that have damage caps to it. So you can't do what we've been doing with Gamora and that first Glamour fight, where you sort of knock down all the boss's entire health bar before the fight really begins. For example, for the health bar that you see on the bottom right side, it will only go to the bottom of the first line. It will not allow you to do extra damage. So we're going to be shooting him
I
with
think we're going an entirely
each button, which is just mashing Y. And he's going to charge twice. You might remember me saying earlier that activating Witch Time ends up being slower because it enters the entire environment to the slowdown state, which increases the number of seconds that you are actually having to do the fight. For that reason, there are 3 phases, and for the first phase, we are going to dodge none of the attacks. We're going to actually increase damage on them. There's that first one. And because we're playing on easy, that's not really too big. If we were playing on normal or hard, that would be significantly more dangerous. Take more damage. But on easy, that's nothing worth noting. I think I'll go down. And this Slammer could try to send a bunch of debris at us, but it's not very fast moving. Nothing really worried. There's that second chunk. And we're just going to punch this one and do first phase. Now, unlike the first phase, we are going to dodge once in the second phase. The world record holder, phase crack, does not actually dodge during the second phase. I believe he just continues doing the shooting thing. I find that a little bit too inconsistent for my taste, and generally speaking, of the speed limit, I prefer consistency over raw speed, but we're going to take a little bit of time, just to make sure we get enough damage off before the third phase. Got that, and we can hopefully get 3 times 6 times 1. The other reason we're actually going to be doing that, in addition to doing extra damage, is because we actually want to get as much magic as there's going to be a couple sections in the final phase where having extra magic is very useful. There is an optimization you can do. It's a little bit hard to get. If you jump at just the right time, oh, I actually got it. You can avoid actually getting hit. Saving you, like, literally less than half a second from the, oh no, I got it. Alright, we now enter the third phase. Which one person in my chat today, when I was doing some practice runs, said looks very much like the DLC, the Godman DLC, which I can absolutely see. Alright, for this first enemy, we're going to dodge, and then use our punch, punch, punch combo with our it's our extra magic that we got from that dodge that we did. That was technically not. For the second one, we're just going to be doing punch, get punch. And for this final glamour, the one that we've been wailing on so much so far, we're going to be doing a bit of a cheeky strat by activating the first of our red candies, turning into the mech, and simply just mashing the button. This fight can be really annoying, but by mashing the shoot button, you do way too much damage with the mech, and it completely ruins the fight before you even get to perform it properly. With the sonic crushing, we're going to mash that. And that is going to be the end of the phase. Okay. Starting the fourth chapter is our first encounter against an enemy known as Boulder, who you might remember the name from as the final boss of Bayonetta 1, but we'll get to the lore later, if I remember it. We're going to be performing a slight skip here. On that bridge is another fight trigger, so we're going to actually circumvent it by jumping with our Cougar onto this little platform here, and then jumping all the way over to the ledge here, so we don't actually have to do it. Activating one of our purple candies. I expect that coming up in just a couple seconds. we're going to run into the fight, ideally, activate our feathers, and get enough damage in so that we actually get home. And that will finish off relatively quickly. I used to do that fight in a suboptimal way. I would actually enter the menu and get a big and use one of my big purple canes. Until Ace told me that was a little bit too slow. I disbelieved him for a little bit. I've seen twice. This fight is no different than the others. And some feathers. Okay. So coming up is the fight against Baldur that I was mentioning before. Ideally, you have 2 full magic bars, which I do, which is fantastic. The fight is going to be very simple, and it should be simple because if you don't do this correctly, Baldur has a lot of fancy, speedy moves that he likes you to get out of your combat with. But we're going to dodge this first set of balls here, and then use a red candy and just use mech for the entirety of the fight. You're going to see that we actually run out of magic here in the third phase, but by pulling one punch, without the mech, we can restore our magic ball. A couple uppercuts from the Madama Butterfly here will end the fights after we get our punch. And here's chapter 4. Not too bad.
Nothing can contain.
There are these really annoying things that they add to the end of every chapter, known as burst cards. These little collectible things that get you extra things that you can do in the multiplayer mode of this game. I wish there was a way to just accept all of them, but alas, no such option. Chapter 5 gives us the worst mechanic in this game, which is operating with this little snake thing. Controlling it is simply awful. In addition to move, oh, it's cobra. Excuse me. In addition to moving with the right stick and moving the direction, you also have to mash B, also on the right-hand side of your controller. So you end up flailing around your right thumb, and if only you could see it right now. Pretty stupid. That's beside the point. Alright, Loki is going to activate an ancient switch or something, and we're going to be using it to build a gigantic bridge all the way up to Mount Fimbulventer, which is the, I guess, portal to hell, which is where we need to go to rescue Jean. And then we meet a new enemy known as Pain. That was crazy. One thing about doing these fights properly that I hadn't mentioned before is that if you start a chapter and you don't have enough magic to actually activate something, you need a minimum of 2 magic knockouts. The general way that we like to get that is to turn to the Panther and then run up and slap it one time. That should give you enough because of easy mode's insane magic gain to activate the feathers very soon. After leaving the waterhole, skip a cutscene and then run back. This game really wants you to watch this really long cutscene with Loki, starting from all the way at the bottom of the stairs.
The bridge to the heavens should
We're
be
going
right
to sort of
above us.
circumnavigate that
Are you
and
sure?
make our way to about
Not
1/3 of the
Not
stairs,
really, huh?
so we don't have to like
You're right.
waste more time than we need to by
Call it a
woman's
watching Loki and
Women's
I guess it's supposed to be
intuition.
Bayonetta,
What
but
kind of
playing
silly
as
comic book
Rosa's
shit is that?
little talky
Still
talk.
don't know a thing about me.
Let's just
I
say
really
I
wish
have
that I had
plenty of
anything interesting to say about this.
Nothing coming to mind.
Not.
What?
I spent 500 years not knowing who I was.
So I'm going
I
to
only
spend some
found out
time
the truth
lamenting the
recently.
next fight.
You too?
We're going to be
Listen, I
fighting
don't
on a
remember a
gigantic
thing.
orb,
Nothing.
basically.
I don't even
And
know
what's
why I'm
really
so
fun
damn
about
sure I
it
need to
is that
go to
enemies
that
just
mountain.
sometimes don't like
But
to
I
spawn.
know I have to.
I have this
It's all I know.
idea that
Does that
enemies
make any sense?
don't like to spawn
Come now, little
if you're
one.
in the middle of a
Can't let the girls
transformation.
know
So,
you've got a
for
heart.
example, Panther
It's
within
not
or
like
Cougar
that.
within.
If that's all you know, that's all
But
the
that's
sense
never
you
really
need.
been confirmed, and sometimes
Just
enemies just
believe.
don't spawn, and
That's
you
what
sort of
I
have to
did.
wait for them, and there are elements of RNG to it. But not. Take off these guys as fast as possible. And then with our feathers, we're basically just going to spawn camp the next few flying enemies. They're very weak. But I guess so is everything. That was actually pretty good. We got
Nothing can
all the enemies
contain
spawned the
me.
way that they were intended. Sometimes they just don't do that. I'll count myself lucky. We're gonna jump away from this giant urbane enemy. And since we're lucky, we don't have any methods of actually taking it out. So we're going to be jumping, dodging, and also shooting a laser behind it.
He's chasing us now.
It's like a little bit.
Crap! Nothing's working.
Ideally, we only have 3 cycles of that before we get to the top. And then we actually get to one of them on the casual side, one of the more difficult fights of the game, where you just fight 2 of these guys. I used to have a strat where I used a red candy and also the mech, which does, as you might expect, insane damage from first the mech and then also the red candy. However, because we have a new candy route, or at least I'm using a new candy route, it is better to just use your feathers. And this is what I meant about some chapters just feeling weirdly short, and some chapters feeling weirdly long. Chapter 6 is just one fight. That's just the entire chapter. Why did they do that? I don't know. But, whatever. It's going to be against an enemy known as Valor. And what we're going to basically do is try to stun lock just with continuous punch, kick, punch, punch. He'll try to leave the... Oh, he actually did leave the arena. It's a little bit unfortunate. Obviously, by leaving the arena, it makes it so you can't hit him. So, ideally, we stun lock him to prevent him from doing any damage. We got the better version of it. There's a version of it jumping out that you can do that takes a long time and you have to do this really long feat. For the second phase, we're just going to do exactly what we did to the Glamour in Chapter 3, and just map the shoot button and the red. That's a really long attack. Some of the climax cutscenes are skippable, some of them are not. This is one of the longer ones that are not. A little bit unfortunate. I guess I get to get a little bit of lore. We are on our way. So we've got a couple more hurdles. Alright. Chapter 7 is basically home to 2 big boss fights, one of which is another fight against Baldur, the other one being against this giant manta ray known as... We're gonna fight Insidious first. And we're gonna start the fight off by taunting him. You might remember taunting from the very opening of the game, but what it also does is it makes enemies move a little bit faster. Little intro cutscene he does. Stormed just by Now, if you're a Legend of Zelda fan, you might feel very at home with all of these eyes that we're taking out. He's gonna send a bunch of missiles at us. On any other difficulty that's not easy, these missiles are actually super scary. Even if you're playing on normal, it will almost take out your entire health bar in 1 hit. On hard and infinite plans, it will absolutely. I think we avoided it. I'm gonna try to take out the second phase. Using my shoot button here, and it should. That is the fast way of getting past the second. A little more broad and relatively easy to speak of. And we're going to purposefully make our way into the black hole just so we can function and reveal the extendable. This always reminded me of spoilers for Chrono Trigger. The final Lavos fight from Chrono Trigger, where the main enemy was not actually the big thing that you see in the center. It's actually the pod on the right. I would have never expected that the core of the manta ray is just randomly in its left wing. And after a bit more mapping, we will be done. Not the only insidious we're gonna see. Keep an eye out for them. Although, all things considered, pretty hard to miss. So what was unique about this game is that you actually got to fight against the legions of hell and not just the angels that fought in Bayonetta 1. And from this point of the game onward, we're going to see a lot more hell. Nice game. Very cool tutorial. Not too bad. We also want to make sure that we end this fight with full magic, because we're going to need all of it for the next boulder. And all things considered, it's going to be very much the same as the first boulder fights. Pop a big red candy, pop your mech, and just sort of go to town on it. Only difference here is that the final phase has a bit of a damage quirk, where one combo won't actually take out the entire health bar, so we're going to try to get one extra little punch in here. So we got it. Meaning that we can take out the rest of the health bar without any problems. That is yet another RNG element. And like I said, part of running this game is just being able to adapt. Obviously, if you didn't have to adapt to something like that, it'd be faster. But especially when you're learning this run, a lot of it is about keeping your cool when things don't go well. More PPEs, and we will be done with Chapter 7. Now, I said at the beginning of Chapter 1 that one of our abilities known as Witch Twist would come in real handy. And it is for this one skip that I'm going to do called Infinite Witch Twist. Basically, you can cancel Infinite Witch Twist into Infinite Witch Twist, which means that you can get infinite height, at least as far as the skybox goes. That's going to be really important because we're going to want to skip a couple fights and also a rather lengthy running section. By using Witch Twist over and over and over again, we're going to try to make our way to a very far off platform. See if I can get it. I'm going to give it a few tries.
Try to keep up. Slow down, will you? Slow down, will you?
All right. Looks good. Now after doing that, we get to fight probably one of the worst things from Bayonetta 1, which is Gollum. He's not quite as annoying as he was in Bayonetta 1. He's not going to really follow you around like he did in the first game and try to stop you from doing things like basic puzzles.
This is simply the benefit of training.
But the fights are still rather fast and can lead to annoyance if you're not used to it. Alright, a couple fights here. And turn our feathers on and then punch the rest of the small enemies in hopes of revealing this third enemy, which will thankfully be taken out with one punch combo from the mech. They're very fast and they have a shield, meaning they can actually deflect your attacks. If you don't have a full magic bar there, that fight can be a little bit obnoxious. A bit of an optimization here by running all the way to the end here. Loki will create his portal for you a little bit faster. And by jumping over here instead of running through the path. Wait, maybe 1 extra second of when we're doing these launch ourselves towards this giant pyramid in the background things, there's going to be a few crystals on the way that are darker than the others. We do not want to hit those. Much like the books in that are just sort of littered around the area. When you get them, you get like a power up or something, and it's fine. It like doesn't hurt you, but it does waste your time. And I don't know if you've heard, but this is a speedrun, and we like to be fast. We're going to be throwing another fight skip here. Anything that is like a big round circular platform is sort of guaranteed to be a fight, so we can just sort of move around it. Reload some feathers here for you can fight against 2 very massive enemies. One of which again has a shield, so we'd like to take it out as fast as possible. And that makes a good fight. We also have a lot of magic, which is good because we have a couple squiddy enemies that you can take out in the water. We're going to take out this one with our feathers, and then the remaining ones we're going to use our maximum full damage and take out the others. They can be a little bit annoying because the amount of health that they have is just enough to where one combo won't take out both of them if you're dealing damage against multiple enemies. We want to be a little bit careful. We're going to initiate a chase sequence here with Gollum. We're going to just use the cat. Ideally, you would have a full magic bar so you can use that fastest movement option as possible. Simply using the map to zoom your way out. Not a huge deal. We're also going to preload some others here. As we have a fight against yet another enemy. The battle of the chapter. And there it is.
This is simply the benefit of training.
That was easy.
So like I said, there's that darker red crystal that I just passed there. We definitely did not want to hit that. Congratulations, you got a witch heart. Which is basically like a piece of heart from Zelda. Collect 4 of them and your maximum health grows. We're playing on easy, not our biggest concern. Alright, Chapter 9 is basically more of the same of Chapter 8. I'm not exactly sure why they split them, but who cares, I guess. We're going to be doing the exact same thing. We're going to be activating these terminals that Loki creates. And creating more sort of launch areas that we can use to sort of catapult ourselves to that giant attack, which is the gateway to There's a little bit of a movement skip that we can do here. Again, another circular platform suggests a fight, so by jumping on the sides, we can, oh my gosh, make our way around it. That was very precarious. Ideally, you don't have to turn to the crow there at all. I decided to be safe. We pick up a Mega Res Lollipop there for extra damage down the line. And we're going to try to move behind the forest so that we can a little bit of magic or other. And then we have another Robbie left here. But nothing changes. When will they learn? Mookie will create a portal for us and jump through just as it opens. And instead of doing the fight that's on the stairs here, we're just going to take a little bit of a shortcut thing. We have our final fight against Golem here, so. And that was a good one. That fight can actually be rather obnoxious. Because of the way that the bird works, you constantly lose airtime as you go, so you go steadily down like that. And because the orb is so close to the ground, it's very easy to transform back into human Rosa as opposed to Crow Rosa.
Darkness is the absence of light.
Alright, here's our first fight against... This guy has so many names, I don't remember exactly which one this is. I think it's the Prophets, but differences be darned, I guess, in this case. All we're going to be doing is exactly what we do with Balder as well. Pop a red candy and turn to the knife. And there it is. Alright, so after completing Chapter 8 and Chapter 9, we have finally unlocked the gates. Well, we're not really unlocked. We did not use the key. We sort of brute forced it in, but that's okay. As we make our way to Chapter 10. Jump over the book, like I said before. We don't want to read, as it is slow. And we're gonna do a little bit of centipede dodging here. We know where all of them are gonna attack at every time, so we just need There's a bit of a jump scare. Did it catch you? Be honest. And as we make our way to the bottom, we're going to face off against Tantas Morning, try to summon them to get into the tree.
This is simply the benefit of training.
And we're going to dodge its first attack. Give it a strike as we did before, and that should be enough. Give us enough magic to be able to take out the rest of it. This is basically just a gauntlet of fun hell enemies. Not really much more than that, so you just one after the other. Or at least most of them are fun. The next one that's coming up is actually rather awful. I believe its name is Resentment. And what Resentment can do is turn you into a child and then one hit kill you if you're not careful and you don't run away. That's obviously awful. And if doing a one-hit kill would be bad enough, but the fact that it takes like 10,000 years to actually do the thing is also worth it. Luckily, with our Umbran mech, we can sort of power through the beam that would turn you into a mech. So we are never really in danger. We're going to be slapping these weird tentacle eye things to allow us to progress to the next sector. Coming up is an enemy known as Sloth, who, despite the name, has the fastest movement speed of any normal enemy in the game, I believe. So we're going to preload some feathers, and then after we dodge his first attack, which is always going to be a stab from above, use the max damage. We actually got the optimal version of it. The witch time window is the same as Bayonetta's, to my knowledge, which means it's actually rather generous. In that particular instance, we do want to dodge, but we also don't want to activate witch time, because again, witch time is pretty slow. So we did get the optimal version, where we both dodge the attack and also deal all the feather damage that we had intended. Coming up here is a fight, thankfully not against Rodon, but with Rodon. He is the shopkeeper of the Gates of Hell, and yeah, he's uber powerful.
So let's have some.
Even though Rosa's very powerful, Rodon takes it to another level. And we're basically just going to be fighting. In particular, we're going to try to prime him and manipulate his AI into doing an attack called the Stomp against very specific enemies with really high health. Obviously, it'll, that's the Stomp. It'll want to kill basically any enemy that he sees and that it hits. The only problem being that when he does it, seems to be pretty arbitrary. So yeah, he did the Stomp there even though there were no enemies on screen, which is not good. But not good for the world. I guess he was just a little bit distracted. And then we get two teams. Oh, he was very nice to us. Ideally, we wanted to use one of his big attacks for those final two enemies there, because they have a lot of health, and if we just had to sit there and take him out for him, it would take a little bit too.
Jean, there she is.
Hold up. You're not seriously thinking of getting between a man.
This is not skippable, unfortunately. We have to wait till we get the results screen for the fight.
Chill, Bayonetta. Don't go shooting up my target.
I guess we get a little bit of a resting break. And Chapter 11 is yet another chapter that just consists of one fight, this time against Alron, who's like a pants demon, basically. First phase is actually pretty simple. We're going to be using our two remaining purple candies to give us one full magic bar, as well as our red candy. And you might imagine what those two things in conjunction do. This is access to mech and a super-powered mech. Makes the first phase go pretty quickly. Ideally, at least. That was interesting. The second phase here is ironically easier than the first. It just has a massive hitbox, and your energy gain from every attack that you do on it is huge. So you're basically never in danger. And that's chapter 11. So again, I'm not particularly sure how they divvied up the chapters, but hey, you tell someone that there's 16 chapters to get through in the game, I'm glad some of them are short. Okay, moving on to chapter 12. We're going to do chapter 12, obviously, but before that, we're going to make our second and final shopping trip of the run. We're basically just going to be restocking on all of our candies. By this point, we have more than enough money to do so. And we'll be using 2 of them in the upcoming fight against Baldur in this chapter, but not before we do one of the coolest things I've ever done in a video game, which is ride on the back of a demon horse. extremely quickly through the realm of hell. And you have a sword. I mean, can't get much cooler than that. There's a couple things to mention after you do this. Since we're playing as Rosa, our damage output is indeed tripled. And we're going to be using this extended version of it once we activate our Unleash Climax, or what would normally be the next button. Oftentimes the enemies that spawn will be staggered, but we don't actually want to end our Unleash Climax, because then we won't have Unleash Climax to use against the second enemy. So we're actually going to use Unleash Climax, waste a ton of magic after using the first hit, and then use the second hit just before our magic runs. And have to take out all the pairs of enemies. And thankfully, you know exactly where and when they're going to spawn. It's just a matter of optimization, because playing test for something particularly difficult. Alright, here's another example of that. Range attack, let our magic keep going down as we see the enemy. Everyone, get ready for a big jump. Everyone say wee. What a good jump. I hope you have fun. Got a couple spines here. We can actually move to a left hand here left hand this time. And we can do that same magic delay strength. And that section does it. Coming up is the fight against Boulder. We're going to be using one small purple candy and one small red candy, just to get us enough to use, just to get us far enough to use our feathers. That'll make it so that once we hit Boulder with our feathers, we can actually enter the second phase of the fight with the mech. Like that. We actually need to be very careful here, so as to not take, so as to not reduce Baldur's health all the way down to 0 in the first hit. There's this extremely obnoxious thing that can happen, where if you deplete Baldur's health bar before the end of the first phase, when the second phase, after the transition to the second phase, he just doesn't appear, and you are solved. You must restart the chapter. I found that out the hard way, so learn from my mistakes. Make sure that you're keeping a careful eye on how much health Boulder has in it. Alright, so we've officially rescued John, so now the plot of the game hardcore pivots to rescuing the world from the clutches of Lofter and Aesir, who is the god of chaos. And if you played Bayonetta 1, this place might look a little bit familiar. This is indeed Vigrid, the Vigrid, and we've been fighting all these weird centaur enemies for time. It's time to get back to our roots and take out some good old-fashioned angels. After that, we're going to face one of the many bosses of Bayonetta 1. I think we're going to cycle through all of them by the end of the game. But our feathers are simply too small. And there's the fight done with. Oh, this category is so fun. We have to avoid being stomped on for a little bit, but after that, we just do a couple extra events in the fight. There's going to be a small fight in this little corridor here. We're going to use a combination of feathers as well as the max to hopefully take out these enemies with a ton of damage as well as cost. It didn't quite go as expected, but these lasers, if you're playing on normal hard or instant climax will absolutely obliterate you. They'll still do a ton of damage off you. Yeah, it's a powerful. We have to wait coming up, but before that, we need to activate this secret chest here and to pick up another red lollipop. The big one. And we're going to be reintroduced to a mechanic that we saw in Bayonetta 1, where you can sort of use your witch time to run across things that are very fast moving. For instance, the water. Activate it very quickly, and because we have max rhythm, we are fast, smooth, and often, like I said before. Briefly leave it so I can cover, and then hopefully trap them both in one corner. Ideally, we would have trapped them both in one corner, and our final punch would have taken them both out at the same time, but we lost maybe 2 seconds.
This is simply the benefit of training.
As we jump down here, we face our biggest enemy yet. And luckily, this hand is taken out with one ring of feathers. If he's going to be a recurring for the rest of the chapter. And we're going to activate yet another time slow down statue and make our way across this crumbling bridge, which is actually rather finicky and precise to get through. Thank God. And now we get to fight hand 2.0. After skipping the stuffing, we can run on his body in witch time and make our way to the final section. Movement in the section is actually really nice and scary. There's a fight here that we can skip with just like going around it. Oh no. That's not the best movement I've ever done. Ideally, what you'll be doing is you would be on that platform and simply using the max increased speed to jump over to this platform, but I find myself incredibly inconsistent on it, so I just do it the wrong way. Give ourselves a little bit more candy, this time of the magic variety. And we'll have our final fight against our adversary. We're going to pop a small red candy here. And if you thought feathers were powerful before, just think about feathers that are powered by the red candy. That fight didn't actually go quite as expected. Ideally, it would have just taken 4 rings of feathers, but I very foolishly did not dodge the first attack, even though it's rather consistent once again. That was totally on me. Alright, that is the end of chapter 13, and we move on to the 14. Which is going to be entirely in the mech. And now you might be asking yourself, well, if you were in the mech before, and that was your Umbran Climax, what happens when you do Umbran Climax in the Umbran Climax? Good question. It gives you these missiles instead of normal guns that just do insane damage. Definitely more than the feathers in terms of just raw DPS. To show you how powerful we are in this form, we're going to be facing against 5 of these attacks just right from the beginning. Just to show how far we've driven. We have our purple now, and we're going to use it to completely obliterate all of these. Yeah, it's fun to feel really powerful, and that's, again, what I really like about running this game, especially this category. It's just fun to feel. Make sure to dodge these lasers here. Technically it is slower, but these guys actually do quite a bit of damage, so it's actually worth them. We get an Urbane and Gravitas combo here. We're going to use our Umbran Climax, our UC. Take that out, and then take out this guy really. we're gonna have a fight against probably the worst boss of Bayonetta 1. I'd say Kenshia. I think that's he has this RNG thing that he can do where he sort of like leaps away from you and shoots a bunch of missiles. That's obviously awful. We would prefer him to stay right where we are so we don't have to chase after him. Hopefully we get through that. Not too bad so far. There it is. And that was actually my fault. If I had simply used push time properly, then that wouldn't have happened. So that was totally my fault. You could even probably see it. I dodged the first of the two claw attacks, but I had forgotten that he does them, two of them in the second. I just did not dodge the second one. 100% avoidable. Alright, we're going to be fighting a warship. Would it surprise you to know that his name is Warship? It's actually Warship, spelled W-O-R-S-H-I-P. But very, very clever naming on it. 25% of the boss health bars are taken up by these little shields, barriers, I guess you could call them. And the remaining 58% is the head of worship. Please don't do the thing. Okay. You could do this really annoying thing where he just like sort of up from you, which is obviously not good. That's, he only did it once. He can do it many times in succession if he really wants to charge up that laser. Alright, our final fight of the chapter is going to be Istisha. He'll go down very quickly with our Umbran climax. And he's good. There we go. Alright, 2 chapters left to go. Chapter 15 is basically just a gauntlet against a ton of Bayonetta 1 enemies, so if you're a fan of Grace and Glory, boy howdy, do I have the surprise for you. This is just super execution heavy, just knowing where enemies are spawning and knowing what enemies you have to kill to spawn the next enemies. Or I could just not dodge the very first attack that I see, and that's also cool, I guess. Grace, thankfully taken over relatively. Something that you might not expect, that the game expects you to know, is that the smaller angels, the less important normal standard winged angels, you actually do have to take them out, and you do have to consider how they actually operate in the context of the fight. If you don't take enough of them out, the next wave of enemies will not spawn, and you do need to make sure that they're all taken out. Encounter. It's not just the big enemies you need to worry about, it's also the small ones, which is a nice thing. And there it is. Alright, and if you remember the opening credits sequence, the opening lore sequence of Bayonetta 1, that is coming up. But not before we have to fight. One of my friends, I think, likes to call him Mr. Noodle Fingers, which unfortunately we did not get to see the noodle fingers. Trust me when I say that they exist. Alright, here's that falling clock. Maybe you're a fan of the Smash 4 stage. That's also really understandable. Okay.
This is simply the benefit of training.
And then we have a fight against a lobster. Who looks like Loki. Technically not Loki, but we have such disdain for Loki that we're just gonna pretend that it's Loki, so we can feel like we're actually fighting Loki. Alex, you ever headbutt a meteor? Alright. Now, you would expect that to be the end of the chapter, right? Look at that very epic scenery that we have here. For some reason, this is not the end of... I'm not exactly sure why they added more. I guess they really wanted that lore bit to be in there. Couldn't wait till the end. So, we're gonna go visit the tomb of our mother. But not before fighting Grace and Glory one last time. It's almost like the developers knew something. I appreciate. Alright, a couple very precise inputs here. Get cutscene twice, press A twice, and then simply run up. And I forgot to skip the cutscene. Alright, last chapter of the game coming in. Now, if you were to expect the first thing that you were going to do for Bayonetta 2, the first thing that you do in the final chapter of the game, what would you expect? If you said a plane sequence, you're a genius. We're going to be playing as both Baldur and Rosa here. And we're going to be generating as much magic at the beginning of this level as possible by using Baldur's Charged Sword Strike. So the entire screen wipe, the entire distance. I'm missing a lot of them actually, which is unfortunate. Ideally we have at least one magic bar for all of the many bosses that we're going to get. The first one being the lamp. These fights are very arty, and it's sort of unfortunate that that's the case. Basically, you want to be up close and personal with this boss as much as possible. Baldur does more damage than Rosa. But if they just happen to go too far away, unfortunately you're going to have to resort to using Rosa's ranged attacks. Thankfully, I was able to get enough magic so that I didn't have to worry about it too much once he jumped up. We're going to be timing these strikes a little bit to make sure that we get as many as possible and move the phases as quickly as possible. That being said, this is mostly an auto-scroller, typically beat it with enemies with you, but you can do your best. Thankfully, we have 2 full magic bars here, so we don't actually have to worry about how power is away. Good fight. Very good fight. Well, now that we've taken out the legions of heaven, we can now start taking out the legions of hell. And we've only really faced one gigantic hell enemy. And if you remember all the way back from chapter 6, it is indeed Insidious, our dear manta ray friend. it's not super necessary to have a full kinetic large for when you actually do see Insidious. It's just reason being is the more magic you have by the end of the death section before you actually face the final boss, the better, because you actually have to use fewer purple candies than that. So let's see what we can do here. Pass, but again, we can do the same thing over here. Alright, it's not too bad. We actually have quite a bit of magic. So hopefully when we get this little fake out here, and we basically just spam Rosa's guns, it should give us at least one full magic. Not entirely sure. Alright, it did. That's good. Get 3 cutscenes and make our way to the final boss. We're going to be using the remainder of our candies since we don't need them for anything else. We're going to use our 2 remaining small ones to fill up our magic bar all the way to the top. We're going to use one of our big red candies so we can make our way through the first phase very quickly. And we're also going to equip our big purple candies so that we don't have to worry about that in the second and third phase. Aesir here can do this very obnoxious thing, that is that, where he spends a lot of time to summon these gigantic flames at you. And, you know, not much you can do about that. Ideally, you would be able to take him out fast enough to where he doesn't have the option. Like I said, this run is all about adapting to your surroundings. We should have our red candy still activated. And because of that, all we have to do is into the map one more time. And that is the final boss of the game. Run up to him, do a little bit of a slash, and activate the final climax, which involves a couple of climax. The first of which, the damage is measured in infinite times, so you can speculate on how much force damage. And Jean is going to get the last word here. And her Gamora will be the one to finish off a revenge, of course, for knocking the soul out of their body from at the very beginning of the game. Some good comeuppance for a villain. Unlike the first game where you had to dodge planets, it is much more user-friendly to direct someone into the gaping mouth of Gamora instead of having to dodge planets with people. So I'm thankful for the developers of making it. And there it is. Now, we're going to be watching the credits. Unfortunately, time does not stop at the beginning of the credits. That is because we still have control, and the game and the speedrun moderators decided that, for good reason, might I add, that until you truly lose control of the game, that we must continue to run the timer. So this is indeed an auto-scroller for the vast majority of the credits. The exception is at the very end. There's going to be one final task, you might say, that takes place on top of the ship. And as soon as that gets taken out, that will be fine. So it's going to be a little hard to call time for the purpose of the production, but I will do my best. Because this is an auto-scroller and we're basically just reliving our way through some fights, I'll might as well take the time to shout out some people and some communities, since we had some technical difficulties going into the run, because we'll save them some shout outs, of course, to the Bayonetta 2, or the Bayonetta speedrunning community in general. They're really great, they're super nice. Ace Kana in particular is the only reason why I'm good at this game, or even close to optimal. His wealth of knowledge about this game is just incredible. Hap and Call Me Breathing Balm are also really important members of the community, as is Reclaimer for some of the others. Bayonetta 3 is a really cool run, and there's not too many runs of it on the leaderboard, so if either this game or Bayonetta 3 looks interesting to you, please reach out to the Bayonetta speedrunning Discord. We would love to have you, and there's a lot to learn, yes, but all of it is very fun, and you get to talk to a lot of cool people in the meanwhile. In addition, obviously, shout out to my community, who are extremely supportive of me, even when I'm perhaps a little bit too negative for Nancy, but I wouldn't be here or doing any marathons that I do without their support, and all of them together form the reason that I do this. It's just really fun to play games for people. I have been a variety pack. I have historically streamed this game, as well as Bioshock Infinite speedruns, as well as The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess 2 speedruns, but I've been looking to branch out to other games. Speaking of Bioshock Infinite, that is the other one that'll be fulfilling Shots Fired. I do have another one coming up. That'll be Bioshock Infinite Gearless, where we don't actually have to worry about picking up any power-ups. So, be on the lookout for that as well. Coming up is the final segment that I was talking about, so I'll alert production for time. It'll be when the screen flashes and I've successfully completed the final. There we go, that's time. Alright, thank you very much for watching, and enjoy the rest of the marathon. Thank you.